Hi, welcome to part 4, the final part of this presentation. In this section, we will be focusing on ethical issues related to developing serious game characters, how to develop serious game characters in a responsible manner. I'd like to remind you that an ethical issue arises when there are uncertainties about the right course of action. This section will not directly focus on ethical issues, but will guide you through the considerations involved in responsibly developing serious game characters. We will start by watching a short video clip of a serious game-based resource developed for medical student trainees.
Have you even been to medical school? Alright, how would you treat him?
Social learning theory. Social learning theory states that people learn within a context. Much of what people learn is through role modeling others and by observing others.
Well, in psychology we learn social learning theory, and we learn by seeing how expert others, so the doctor which is put into the game could be perceived as an expert person and can be used as a point of reference for the person playing the game to imitate or simulate their behavior. So definitely the person would play quite a strong role as a role model, even though it's in a game situation.
Social learning theory has gained much popularity and influence in the world of education and training. And you saw from the previous slide that it has much relevance to developing characters in a serious game. In the next few slides, you will hear a range of views from stakeholders about the influence that serious games can have on their learning.
I would argue, even just a subconscious level, it's going to have an effect.
I do use humor occasionally when I'm really sure on the grounds. But the young medical student who does not have the capacity to distinguish the nuances and the skill levels required in the doctor-patient relationship will find this unhelpful. I think you just want to illustrate highly professional behaviors in games. The interaction of team members can differ, and it depends on the specialty, whether it's an emergency department or a general practice setting, as well as simply because of differences in working cultures. The video clip you listen to and the quotes you listen to illustrates the complexities involved in developing game characters. And they also emphasize the importance of utilizing appropriate multidisciplinary expertise to ensure the integrity of the game.
I think that is the care of the designer of the game to show the best practice of the entities that surround the medical scenario. That is, it is appropriate to use role models to show the student how, for example, an interview to the patient should be conducted, and to demonstrate how the procedure takes place, what kind of answer one could receive from the patient, and what kind of dialogue could be generated. So embedding good practice example, it is very important because the student will sort of automatically learn the manner of questioning and so on, and unconsciously. So great care should be placed to form the character as role models to the real world. And this is a very important role, and it should be the care of the game designer and developer. And above all, to ensure this, it is necessary that once the game is developed, expert in the field, so medical expert in this case, or assess that the role model portrayed in the game are correct. So not to teach, because one of the problems of serious game is that you might learn something wrong.
There was a slight preference from most interviewees for developing games which contain real as opposed to animated characters. Here is a quote from a medical education expert. Characters in games can influence learning and the learner's future behavior. Real characters can be more influential than animations.
It depends what you're trying to teach, really. I mean, most of the things with medicine, a degree is going to be how the patient looks, and you can't really translate that to animations. But then it's going to be difficult if you want to make a game for an iPhone or an app, then you're not going to be able to have the kind of graphics the kind of power that you need to have video graphics, and you might have to compromise and have that. Depends. Some scenarios probably lend.
The next two slides present a discussion between student doctors on how to balance real-world complexity against educational value. How do you strike an appropriate balance when developing a game?
I think so, yes. I think this is even maybe going a step further, but we're always learning, especially in medicine, that eventually it doesn't really become about what you remember from the books. It's about pattern recognition, and part of that is patient stereotyping. When you see a certain type of patient come in, or they tell you already you're supposed to be thinking, it could be this, this and this. So the more the patient reflects the stereotypical patient in that situation, makes it easier to make those links in your mind to what should be done in that particular scenario.
I would argue, even just a subconscious level, it's going to have an effect.
So the participant from the previous slide says, even at an unconscious level, the characters can have an effect on your learning. The uncanny valley hypothesis, well known in the world of robotics, says that when a human replica looks and acts almost like a real human being, it causes a response of revulsion among human observers. The valley refers to the dip in a graph of the comfort level of humans as a function of the robot's human likeness. So up to a point, it's positive to have similarities to humans in characters. But if there is too much similarity, that can cause negative perceptions in the players or users of the resource. However, even though the hypothesis is popular, it does remain a hypothesis. The findings of the studies testing this hypothesis are inconsistent. In the next slide, we are going to consider the 4-point guidance to developing game characters responsibly. So the indication for the need to develop an intervention, in this case it becomes the relevance and purpose of the characters to be introduced into the game. This requires clear justification. We saw from the video clips and from the interview extracts before that establishing stakeholder preferences is important here. Draw from the evidence discussed above, such as the social learning theory, the views of the potential users of the serious game resource. You saw the opinions presented in terms of realism and the potential influence that the game character may have by the student doctors. Contextual considerations. Maximizing benefit will involve that the character development is informed by expert opinion and relevant evidence. We heard from medical education experts that the game character and the game content needs to portray good practice. Ensure that the game doesn't teach inappropriate behaviors or knowledge to the player. The character development is mindful of the context in which the game is situated. You heard Dr. Michelle Marshall's view that the interaction in a team, i.e. in a game between the game characters, can be dependent on the context. We need to ensure then autonomy, beneficence and non-maleficence. In addition to what we've discussed so far, it could also involve providing realistic and adequate options in the game. That brings us to the end of this 4-part presentation. We have produced a full paper which contains the data and the key outcomes of the project. If you would like to read this paper, the details are provided here on this slide. This slide also contains contact details to the principal investigators of this project. We wish you much luck with your own work, and thank you again for listening, taking the time to listen to this presentation.